couldn't be present at your conference in person, and you must forgive my strange clothing. I do wish everyone a very happy and successful day, and I'm very sorry to miss it. My starting point is really the impact of the third way in social democratic thinking from the end of the 1990s. Everyone will remember that at that time, social democrats or left-of-centre parties were in power in a large number of countries within the European Union. And I think one can say that, broadly conceived, the third way was the means whereby this happened. However, it's important to recognize that the third way has also been widely misunderstood, at least my version. The third way for me was a continuation of left-of-centre values, very important to stress this. Second, the third way for me was not, absolutely not, a succumbing to neoliberalism. But for me, it was always necessary to recognize that one must move beyond both traditional top-down statist socialism on the one hand and the market fundamentalism of neoliberalism on the other. That's indeed why I adopted the term the third way. It was time for a third position. Left-of-centre parties or coalitions must reach wide sectors of the electorate. They have to do so in order to win elections. Most people are no longer interested in class politics, and class cannot be the prime basis of a left-of-centre coalition coming to power. Second, many policy innovations made in the late 1990s and early 2000s are still important. I mention one of these here as an example, the notion of flexicurity in labour markets, in other words, protect the worker, not the job. In a situation which we have in modern economies with very radical and quick transformations of work and of the technologies involved in work, it makes much more sense to allow workers to move between jobs. It makes much more sense to create human capital, to focus on education, rather than simply protecting workers solely in existing jobs. The policy orientation of the third way argued that the left must deal with issues where the right has traditionally been strong. These include crime, national identity, and immigration. Those issues cannot be left as the issues of the political right. Left-of-centre parties must pioneer leftist solutions to them. Well, when we move ahead to today, the context of this conference, I think everyone will recognize that social democratic parties or left-of-centre groups have been failing in the European context. Left-of-centre coalitions are only in power in something like 5 out of 27 EU countries at the moment. This sets us on the left a very considerable agenda, and I would recognize 2 levels, as it were, of this agenda. So far as the first of these issues is concerned, that is, what kind of rethinking do we need? One can't deal with this appropriately in a couple of minutes, but I just make 2 points about it. I'm not happy with the current state of debate about the relationship between the state and the economy, where on the one hand, on the political right, you have the continuation of Chicago-style type thinking, and on the left, you have a reversion to Keynesianism. I don't think Keynesianism can supply the answer. I think we have to work out a more active, progressive, dynamic relationship between state, civil society, and markets, and that there is a lot of intellectual work to be done on this. I do accept very strongly the agenda of this conference, which recognizes that in the era of the internet, in the era of what I used to call a reflexive citizenry, a citizenry which is much more knowledgeable and active and available in the past, where you don't get a static relationship between citizens and the state, you have to rethink the active involvement of citizens. a crucial aspect, really, of the continuing process of democratization. My feeling is that those of us on the left should reclaim the notion of freedom. That is, we shouldn't just be insisting on a traditional top-down view of the state. We should be recognizing that the notion of freedom should not be left to the neoliberal political right, but we have to flesh it out under different conditions today from the past. Second, I've spent the last few years working intensively on climate change and environmental issues. To me, the science underlying the risks posed to us by climate change is very, very strong, very robust. To me, climate change is an existential threat to the continuity of industrial civilization. On this earth, this is obviously a huge issue, which is essentially about green growth, which essentially recognizes that we don't want to return to traditional growth, that we have to pioneer new models of welfare, that we are standing on the edge of something, to me anyway, of a greater revolution really than Marx ever anticipated in the mid-19th century. We're talking about how we, over a period of some 20 years, transform the nature of industrial society itself. We are living in an unsustainable civilization. Finally, so far as the second sets of issues that I mentioned is concerned, that is firefighting, those of us on the left have to monitor the struggles of incumbent governments to manage austerity programs. Austerity programs have not been correctly managed or introduced by current governments. They've not given enough thought for investment, not given enough thought to growth, not given enough thought to sustaining welfare systems in an effective way through the process of reduction in fiscal deficits. I therefore conclude by arguing that we should at least consider the possibility of establishing what I would call something like an alliance for power, especially in the larger countries, Italy, Germany, France, and the UK, where we could learn a lot from one another about how to integrate a tactical approach to what will happen in an age of austerity with a more profound rethinking of the centre-left for the future. Well, thank you very much for listening, and again, I wish you a really interesting, successful day, and I'm very sorry to have missed it. Thank you.